You know, death gets a bad rap. We say things like, "This is killing me," or I was bored to death, implying that death is the worst thing that could happen. But death is a part of life. It's not just a part of life, it's an essential part of life. It's a new beginning. Our life on earth is a very small part of our eternity. When I was about 5 years old, I used to go out every summer and visit my grandparents, and they had a ranch in the Chiricahua Mountains here in Arizona, which is in the southeastern part of the state. It was just out in the middle of nowhere. They had probably just started selling acres and acres of land just to people so that they could start their own ranches, kind of like my grandfather and my grandmother did. So there's not anything for miles around. You can see for miles, and you can't see anything from their ranch. It was essentially just a few corrals that they had built, some horses, and then they had a big trailer that we lived in there. There was a generator so that we would have power, and then for water there was a giant tank about the size of a trailer, and every so often we'd have to hook that tank up to my grandfather's pickup truck, and we would drive it through the mountains on this one-lane dirt road back to a well, fill the tank up, and then drag it back to the ranch so that we would have water. And then they would hook it up and it would run from faucets in the trailer just like we had normal running water. One day we're driving along this little road and my grandfather just stops the truck and gets out. Something that you have to understand is my grandfather was the Marlboro man. You've seen those Marlboro print ads and you see the guy and he's a cowboy and he's on the horse and he looks like he's got 5 o'clock shadow that you could sand a board down with, and he looks like he's just tough as nails and strong as leather. That was my grandfather, and he had some point in history decided that it was his job to toughen up the city boy, which wasn't entirely untrue. So anyway, we're driving along this road, he stops his pickup truck, it's him, it's me, and it's my grandmother, and I'm about 5 years old. My grandfather jumps out of the truck and I just think, what's going on here? So I say to my grandmother, what is he doing? She said, he's going to get that snake, I think. And I say, what snake? She says, the snake in the road. And I look over the dash of the pickup truck and I still don't really see the snake. The snake was so long that it actually stretched clear across the road. So I didn't notice it because I was looking for something twisted and like in a little coil or something in the middle of the road. My grandfather gets out, reaches in his pocket, gets out his penknife and just flicks it down into the ground and sticks it right into the back of the head of the rattlesnake. He picks up the rattlesnake, cuts its head off, and throws the headless rattlesnake into the back of his pickup truck. Then he gets in and says to me, 5 years old, get back there and keep an eye on. And at first I thought he was kidding because I thought, that's disgusting. And you know what, I don't want to be back there with a headless rattlesnake, regardless of what it might look like when I get back there. The bad news is, he wasn't kidding. So I get out of the truck and I hop into the back of the pickup truck and I just crouch on the wheel well, trying to stay as far away from the snake as I possibly could. Here's the worst news of all. Even though the snake had no head, it continued to slither around in the bed of the truck. 5 years old, terrified, there's this disgusting headless, what has to be a 12-foot rattlesnake, slithering around, and I know he couldn't bite me because he has no head, but he's slithering all around and it's disgusting and I am terrified. Kind of like when Peter says, your enemy the devil prowls around like a lion looking for someone to devour. We know how Satan ends up, but it didn't stop me at that point either. I was paralyzed with fear. Fear that that snake was gonna somehow hurt me. But there was nothing he could do to me. The snake was most certainly dead, but he had no idea. The snake was moving around, but the only guidance it had was the walls of the pickup. It wasn't going anywhere, but he didn't know that. Jesus says in Matthew 16:24, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. In Luke 14:27, he also says, anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Imagery of the cross and the implication that comes along with it is complete with the idea of death and sacrifice. He doesn't mention the cross thinking that it will be an inconvenience or just something that would be a sign of how spiritual or religious somebody might be, or even how much they had sacrificed. He said it because his whole point is that there has to be some death and some sacrifice, or you can't possibly be his disciple. You know, we hear a lot about the idea of dying to self or dying to sin, and we need to die. Not who we are physically right now, but who we were spiritually before. We need to let them both go to the extent that we miss them as much as we would if we were to die. That's the point of that phrase, dying to sin or dying to self. If you're dead, you can't hear yourself saying inside, I really want that. I want that more than anything else right now. I don't really care what the future might bring or what consequences this might bring along with it. I want that thing right now. And that doesn't even have to be sinful. There's plenty of good things that you could do, or things that aren't specifically outlawed in Scripture, that you can spend a lot of your time doing and miss everything that Jesus has for you. We need to let them go as if we had become numb or dead to them. Are we struggling with sin so much as believers because we become born again without ever dying? We never actually go to the cross. We just want to step right into the new life that Jesus promises us. You know, Jesus basically says, you must die. But if we don't die and we just start trying to live for Him, are we trying to keep two spiritual selves alive? I wonder if this is the kind of thing that leads us to living a double life syndrome. You know, if we never completely die, we can get stuck in the habit of living one way at church, confused, and another way outside the church, which is likely to be the same way we did before we knew God. Are you living spiritually as two people? How hard does that make our Christian walk? How much harder does it make it than our life was before we knew God, when we were only one person and we really only had to deal with one person, and only occasionally maybe having somebody disrupt our comfortable existence by saying, you know what, this isn't all there is. There's more to life than this. You were created for more than this. Do you think that this is all you were created for? But nonetheless, since that's the way we were first and grew up that way, it's still probably easier to slip into that. Much more difficult to live any differently for the hour or so that we're at church on Sundays. Much more easy to build a habit of how we live outside the church for the rest of the week. You know, I mentioned that we all know the certain future of Satan. And just like that snake that I got stuck in the back of the truck with, we ate that snake for dinner. It tasted just like chicken. I like chicken. Dying is coming into the biggest unknown we or anyone will ever face. Are we afraid because we aren't sure we'll like our life afterward? After we give up all the things we're holding on to that are currently holding us back? Because our death is not the issue. Revelations 2:10 says, do not be afraid of what you're about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution. But be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. Romans 6:5 says, if we have been united with Him like this in His death, we will certainly also be united with Him in His resurrection. For we know that our old self was crucified with Him so that the body of sin might be done away with, and that we should no longer be slaves to sin, because anyone who has died has been freed from sin. So allow the death and be free. Lastly, 1 Corinthians 6:14 says, by His power, God raised Jesus from the dead, and He'll raise us also. So grow beyond Jesus died so that I could live, and live like Jesus gave his life so that you wouldn't have to actually die. But do what he asks in return and become like you are dead when it comes to putting yourself first or sin ahead of God. Love Jesus because he died for you, but follow Jesus because he rose from the dead and lives today and loves you.